Classic philosophies, ancient Greek philosophy. Ancient Greek philosophy has three key figures. Socrates, who doubted everything that was considered obvious and inspired critical thinking. To him, philosophy was mostly focused on the nature of the world, where philosophers were looking for the first basis of being. But Socrates overturned these rules of the game and made the center of philosophy not space, but a person and the search for the truth. He believed that the truth of life begins with self-knowledge, and the search for the truth through dialogue. Socrates urged the search for knowledge, such as morality, because thanks to knowledge you can determine what is good and what is bad. Plato, his disciple, founded an academy and wrote about justice and perfection of the state, which is governed by philosophers. He made the ideal higher than the material. Ideas exist objectively, regardless of the person. Plato imagined the human soul as a stroller with three horses: mind, will, and feelings. The task of a person is to learn to keep these horses in harmony. Aristotle, Plato's disciple, who systematized logic, ethics, politics, and metaphysics, argued that the truth is recognized through experience and reason, and goodness is in the golden mean. Their ideas formed the concept of truth, morality, and the nature of reality. The influence of Greek philosophy is preserved to this day. From science to politics, it became the foundation of intellectual searches for millennia. Stoicism teaches that a person can achieve inner peace by accepting what is not in his power, while focusing on what he can control, that is, on his own thoughts and actions. Stoics speak for life in harmony with nature, practice self-discipline, and preserve inner peace before external events and circumstances. The key principles include understanding of dichotomy and control, accepting difficulties as opportunities for growth, and the assertion of four values: wisdom, courage, moderation, and justice. Stoicism encourages a strong and honest approach to life. If anyone is interested, I have a separate detailed video. Epicureanism philosophy is based on the teachings of the ancient Greek philosopher Epicurus. It claims that happiness and spiritual peace are achieved through the search for simple pleasures and avoidance of pain. Unlike hedonism, Epicureanism emphasizes moderation and the transfer of intellectual and spiritual assets over short-term physical ones. Epicureans believe that the goal is to focus on basic necessities, without which there is suffering, and others, such as luxury or bodily excesses, are rejected. The goal of Epicureanism is to achieve ataraxia, that is the state of inner peace and freedom from anxiety. Similar ideas are found in Stoicism, and the term ataraxia is often referred to as apathy in contemporary literature. However, not in the modern understanding of this word, but as a release from emotional anger. In addition, Epicureanism emphasizes the existence of freedom of will. Unlike Stoicism, cynics like Diogenes promoted a complete rejection of material goods, status, and socially acceptable norms. They valued simplicity and believed that chastity was more important than wealth, praise, or social status. Cynical philosophy was accompanied by a sharp criticism of social habits and established values. It encouraged self-sufficiency, independence, and liberation from excessive desires. In the modern understanding, cynicism often manifests as a skepticism of authorities, consumption, and social expectations, with a call for a simpler and more authentic life. The modern word cynicism comes from cynicism, but with a nuance. If cynics fought for sincerity and moral honesty, then today's cynics are those who believe in little and laugh at everything. Is based on a critical attitude to knowledge, beliefs, and assertions, as well as on the tendency to question them. First of all, skeptics question the possibility of achieving absolute certainty. They emphasize the need for evidence to substantiate beliefs on a critical analysis. Skepticism can take different forms, from a methodological one, doubts in certain methods of research, to a radical one, a denial of the very possibility of knowledge. Eastern philosophies, Buddhism, founded by Siddhartha Gautama, aka Buddha, focuses on overcoming suffering. It is based on four noble truths that describe the nature of suffering, its cause, the possibility of cessation, and the path to liberation. This path is eightfold and consists of 8 practices. right understanding, intention, speech, action, way of life, effort, attention and concentration. The central place is awareness, careful attitude to thoughts, words and actions. Self-awareness is the key to enlightenment. It is not enough to just know. You also need to experience certain stages and realize them. Buddha gave direction and showed how to walk, but you trample the path yourself. The ultimate goal of Buddhism is nirvana, liberation from suffering, and the cycle of rebirth. Buddhism denies the existence of permanent self, stating the impermanence, interdependence, and variability of all things. Meditation, ethical life, and compassion lead to enlightenment. This is the philosophy of inner balance, understanding, and liberation from the circle of suffering. Taoism, which begins in ancient Chinese philosophy, focuses on the concept of Tao. That is the first principle of being. It calls to live in harmony with Tao, the natural and cosmic order of things. Yin and Yang symbolize opposites, but complement each other, which are in dynamic equilibrium. Taoism encourages simplicity, spontaneity, and acceptance of changes as part of the natural course of events. The central principle is Wu Wei, inaction or effortless action, when a person does not resist the natural course of things. Tao Te Ching, attributed to Lao Tzu, is the key text of the tradition. Taoism respects modesty, mutual connection, and unity with the influence of the universe. Confucianism, which emerged in ancient China, is a philosophical and ethical system based on Confucian studies. It emphasizes moral honesty, social harmony, and ethical behavior. Among the key principles is the son's respect for the elders and the desire for personal honesty. Lun Yui, or Analects of Confucius, is the main text of the Confucian tradition. Moral and ethical systems, Christianity, the Bible, which consists of the Old and the New Testament, is the sacred writing of Christians. They follow the doctrine of Christ, in which love, forgiveness, and salvation are emphasized. Christians recognize both freedom of will and the ability to change, become better, save themselves, or fall into sin. The main dogma is the faith in death and the resurrection of Jesus for the purpose of atoning for sins. Churches themselves are places of worship that support the development of society and spiritual growth. Despite the great variety of confessions, common beliefs include the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and the importance of a good life. Kantianism is a philosophy based on the study of Immanuel Kant. Its center is the belief that moral actions should be governed by reason and feelings of duty. Kant formulated a categorical imperative, a universal moral law, which should be adhered to regardless of the consequences. It can be transmitted as follows: act only according to the norm you want to see as a universal imperative, a norm for all people and also for yourself. Kant emphasized that people should be considered as a goal, not a means. Kantian ethics emphasizes autonomy, rationality, and inner dignity of personality. At the same time, Kant denies the possibility of direct recognition of the objective world. Before making any statement about the world, we must determine the boundaries of our own recognition. Utilitarianism is an ethical theory based on the consequences of actions, according to which morally correct is what brings the most happiness or satisfaction for the largest number of people. This distinguishes it from hedonism, which is focused on individual satisfaction. Any utilitarian is a hedonist, but not the opposite. Founded by Jeremy Bentham and developed by John Stuart Mill, utilitarianism evaluates actions according to their consequences and the overall level of happiness they create. The theory emphasizes the need to take into account the impact of one's actions on the well-being of society. Philosophy of sense, freedom and absurdity. Existentialism is focused on individual existence and freedom. It emerged in the 19th and 20th centuries and emphasizes subjective experience. From the main topics, one can highlight personal responsibility, choice, and search for meaning in the vain universe. Existentialists, such as Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus, claim that a person recognizes his essence through actions, not external factors. Philosophy explores the anxiety of freedom and the call to create meaning in a world without a set goal, calling for the formation of one's own fate. Phenomenology. Many ideas of existentialism have emerged from phenomenology, a philosophical method developed by Edmund Husserl. What can be said if the method itself was based on the existential analysis of being? Phenomenology studies phenomena as they arise for a person. In order to understand the structures of consciousness, phenomenologists abstain from judging the external reality and focus on subjective experience, seeking to describe the experiences as they are. This approach has influenced psychology, literature, and other fields, emphasizing the thorough analysis of lived experience. Absurdism here, on the contrary. Absurdism emerged from existentialism. It claims that life is devoid of rational or set sense. This idea is particularly vividly traced in the works of Camus. Absurdism arises from the conflict between the human desire for sense and the vanity of the universe. This metaphor is known to everyone by the myth of Sisyphus. Camus proposes to accept absurdism and live authentically, despite the absence of a higher sense. Voluntarism, the main idea of the philosophy of Arthur Schopenhauer, is that the main essence of the world is will. He believed that the will to live is an unknown and infinite force, which lies at the heart of the nature of all phenomena and people. The will for Schopenhauer is blind and has no ultimate goal, and it is this insensitivity that leads to constant desire and, as a result, suffering. Schopenhauer saw human life as an endless struggle called will. Desires that come to fruition only temporarily calm down, but are quickly replaced by new ones, which again leads to suffering. The philosopher saw the reduction of suffering in the view of art, music, the manifestation of empathy, morality, and the rejection of desires. I personally advise you to get acquainted with Schopenhauer's philosophy, as it is quite practical, well suited to our realities, and expressed in a clear language. Schopenhauer also combined Western and Eastern philosophy in his works, which is already interesting in itself. The philosophy of Schopenhauer was inspired by the next philosophers voluntarists, in particular Nietzsche, who called him his educator. Schopenhauer's influence was also recognized by Freud in the formation of his own views. Also, some influence is traced in literature. For example, in the works of Kafka. 9. Nihilism rejects traditional beliefs, claiming that life has no inner meaning or value. It doubts norms, religious dogmas, and moral principles, calling for skepticism of authority. Nihilists believe that existence is devoid of inner purpose or meaning, casting the challenge to the ideas of objective truth or morality. This philosophy often touches on the themes of existentialism and absurdism, emphasizing the personal freedom before the face of the vain universe. Nihilism states the collapse of old values, especially religious and metaphysical, because of which the world becomes empty and meaningless. At the same time, depending on the interpretation and the response to this challenge, it can lead to the creation of its own meaning in the conditions of this uncertainty. 10. Philosophy of action in society. 11. Absolute idealism, also known as Hegelianism, is a philosophical direction that emerged on the basis of the study of Georg Hegel and developed his ideas. Hegel defined the ability of a person to create himself, emphasized the great possibilities of consciousness, and developed the theory of dialectics. He considered the question of the philosophy of nature, history, and aesthetics. The essence of his philosophy lies in the totality of thought and being. According to Hegel, thought does not depend on a person. This is an objective essence. The first reason is being. It is an alienation of being in the form of nature, matter, or as he called it, an absolute idea. In general, Hegel's philosophy includes many phenomena and is explained by complex constructions for understanding, and in turn by invented terms. Therefore, it is difficult for self-realization, which, by the way, was criticized by the aforementioned Schopenhauer. Even the Hegelians themselves interpret this philosophy in different ways. Marxists are followers of Hegel, but Nazism, for example, also borrowed some concepts from his philosophy. Therefore, Hegel's philosophy has a significant impact on the further development of of Western European philosophical thought. Marxism, the social-political theory, is based on Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, which criticizes capitalism. It claims that history develops through class struggle, and capitalism will eventually become socialism and communism. The central idea is a classless, stateless society, where wealth and power are evenly distributed. Marxism seeks to overcome social inequality and protect the rights of workers, revealing the contradictions of capitalist systems. Let me make a few comments. If you do not look in the history textbooks and live somewhere in the West, all this may sound encouraging, but it only sounds. Pragmatism, a philosophical approach developed by thinkers like Charles Peirce, William James, and John Dewey. He values the practical application of ideas more than their theoretical purity. Pragmatists emphasize solving problems, experience, and experimentation as ways of checking beliefs. The truth from the point of view of pragmatism is what works in practice, not what corresponds to abstract principles. The meaning of concepts is examined through their practical consequences in the real world. Feminist philosophy, a broad direction that focuses on the issues of gender and the desire for gender equality. Philosophers analyze the nature of gender, sexism, patriarchy, as well as the relationship with race, class, and sexuality. The goal of feminist philosophy is to deconstruct oppressive structures, to support inclusiveness, and a deeper understanding of female experience. It also puts in doubt traditional notions of subjectivity, morality, knowledge, and justice, which have historically been formed from the perspective of the male dominant. And here I think it is worth noting that feminist philosophy exists in different forms: liberal, radical, Marxist, and others. So if you ever came across this direction and were unpleasantly surprised, it is still not too late to summarize. Well, that's all. As you may have noticed, some philosophical directions are intertwined and carry similar or even almost identical ideas. Or at least interestingly, they grow out of each other. This is quite easy to track, starting with ancient philosophy. I hope you found it interesting. See you. Bye, everyone.